Morning, everyone. My name is Matt Gear, and I'm an engineer for Cisco Meraki. What I wanted to do today was to show you a demonstration of being able to build out, whether it be considered a POV or POC environment, or maybe you want to use this at home, you could, or if you wanted to start this as a template to use for production services, being able to build out a free radius server and integrating that into the Meraki dashboard. And in addition to that, also being able to build out a backend Active Directory server that runs on Linux. And so, the question is, why would we do this, right? Sometimes we want to have a separate testing environment. Maybe we don't have a lot of resources to build out, multiple additional servers. Or maybe we want to use this again for home, for a personal use. Doesn't matter what the use case is. The bottom line is that you can use this as a tool in your environment to be able to test, to be able to play with new settings in the Meraki dashboard if you would like. But being able to have a centralized repository and or location for user database information, and then allowing free radius to integrate that, right? So when we're talking about things like 802.1x, or maybe you're looking at trying to implement Mac-based authentication or Mac Auth with IPSK. Those are the types of things that this design is really about. So this is actually a two-part video, and we're talking about part one right now, which is deploying a Samba server on Rocky Linux and getting it up and running. So what I wanted to do was share my screen. We'll go ahead and actually get into the install, and then I'll show you guys some documentation that was created, and I'll show you guys where to get a script that you can download to be able to get this all implemented, right? So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to share with you is the document, right? So this document is in the details of this video. There's a link there where you can download it. And this document takes you through a step-by-step of a free radius install if you would like. Since this document was created, the installers have been created, right? So for the free radius side of the house, there's a script for that. And for the Samba side of the house, there is a script for that also. And both of them are called easy installers. So right here under the table of contents, if I were to click on easy installer, you'll see that it gives you a little detail and description of what each script does. And then it gives you a link where you can go to GitHub and get that installer, right? The Word document also provides you a couple lines of code that you can use. So even if you don't want to go to GitHub and you just want to grab the code here and paste it into a terminal, into your Linux server that you've created, you can do that also, right? But what I'll show you is actually getting the installer first. So if you went to GitHub, you could actually at the landing page just type in Meraki Matt. And once you type that in, you'll get a result on the left-hand side here for a user. And if we click on that user, then you'll see that there's a couple repositories in here. For the Rocky Active Directory script, which is what we're going to start on first this morning, would be this module here, right? So the RADS module. And then within the repository, if you go to the easy install file, you'll see that we have the same couple lines of code. So for each repository, right, we have a couple lines of code that allows you to launch the script. Now, the Word document also talks about being able to do this in a VMware environment. Today in our demo, we're going to be using KVM, so it's totally agnostic. The scripts are totally agnostic on what virtual machine you're going to run it on, but they do require Rocky Linux, right? And so the way that we get Rocky Linux is if we go to rockylinux.org/download, you'll see that there's a download button. If you went to rockylinux.org, you would see a download button, which would then take you to that URL. And right here, we have the different architectures that are supported right now. For this install, actually both of these installs, we're going to just select the minimal ISO. That's really all you need. The nice thing about both of these scripts is that nothing is really third party from a repository perspective. Everything stays within inside of the Rocky ecosystem and allows you to build everything out from Rocky repos, right? So with that being said, obviously the requirements here are being able to have either physical hardware or a virtual environment, downloading the minimal ISO for Rocky, getting that in your data store so that you can install that, and then actually running through the installer. The Word document talks about the installer, the graphical portion of the setup, and so through there, right, we'll walk you through, setting up the disk, setting up resources, and then actually getting the server, up and running, right? So the requirements there are, making sure that you have a fully qualified domain name, and that FQDN should be the name that you want to use for your Samba Active Directory environment, right? So if I made it test.int, test.int would be my domain that I'm going to create on the Samba side of the house, right? And then the other requirement is static IP address. So if you forget those for whatever reason, that's fine. The installer will run some sanity checks and make sure that you have that information before you actually start the installer. So we've gone over the requirements to get things up and running. So I think what we'll do at this point is we'll actually just start to start the install on the Samba Active Directory side. So in my environment, again, I'm running KVM, and I have a virtual machine that I've already have built out here called dc.test.int. If I click on that guy, I already have it installed, right, just to save us some time in the video. But with that being said, all I did was I ran a minimal install. So literally just popping in the ISO, setting my disk, setting my root password, allowing root SSH access, which again is documented in the Word document, and then letting the installer run, right? If you want to set your FQDN in the installer, you can do that, and your static IP address. If not, again, the installer will catch that and prompt you for that information. Going back to the Word document, also included is an example lab environment. So it's just an embedded PDF file. And what that'll allow you to see is the Samba server free radius setup, our layer 3 infrastructure, and then the Meraki access points that we're going to be using to interconnect into free radius. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring up a terminal. And I'm going to clear out my known hosts here real quick just to make sure. All right. And so the first thing that I'll do is I'll take a look at my dc.test.int here. I'm going to log in. And I want to take a look at my IP address real quick. So this guy picked up a DHCP address in my environment, so I'm going to go ahead and log in with that IP address. Okay, and I can either go to my Word document or I can go to GitHub. I'll just go ahead and use the Word document here. So I'm going to obtain the Samba AD Easy install. And I'm going to grab this little set of code right here, copy it, paste it into my terminal. And you can see that the first thing that the script is going to do is it's going to grab wget and git so that it can then go out to the GitHub repository and actually grab all the resources that are needed for the install. All right, so we have everything cloned in. So this is kind of like a universal installer, if you will, meaning that if you're setting up your first Samba Active Directory server and you're creating a new forest/domain, the installer will do that. If you wanted to add an additional AD server into a pre-existing Samba AD environment, The installer will also do that, and then obviously provisioning a FreeRADIUS server, so all built in. Now, the one thing I do want to mention is that each of those installers are independent of each other, and they cannot coexist on the same server, right? So if you're choosing option one to build out a new forest domain and a new AD server, you don't want to be installing FreeRADIUS on that same server, right? You would want to build out a separate server, and then you would install FreeRADIUS from there, okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and build out our first Samba Active Directory server here. And very first thing we do, right, is we check for that static IP address. And we don't have one on this server, so I'm going to go ahead and make one. And based on our infrastructure in the PDF, we'll just go with those examples. So that was 24.10 with a 24 CIDR. And for our upstream DNS, we'll just go ahead and use an external DNS server here. If you have another DNS server in your environment, you can absolutely use that. So we get a quick review of the data that we entered here to set our network stack. I'm going to go ahead and click continue, or actually I'm going to press enter, and then the server is going to reboot here. So now at my new IP address, I'm going to go ahead and SSH into the server. Now, if you noticed, once we logged back in, the installer automatically started back up for us. So here is our checklist to create a new forest/first AD server install. Just make sure you have that information relative. If you do want to enable DHCP in your environment from this server, you can also do that. There's a subset of scripts that are installed there. So we'll go ahead and create the deployment. So the first thing we need to do is provide a password for the new Active Directory environment that we're building, right? So this is the administrator password for the domain. So I'll go ahead and make it that. And this server obviously is going to provide NTP for our clients. And we're using Chrony here, so we just need to provide an active subnet, right, that we're going to want to service our clients for. Okay, and just for fun, yeah, we'll go ahead and install the DHCP server component also. And so for this, we are running ISC DHCPD. And so with that DHCP server, right, we need to have a declaration for the locally bound network interface, right? So that's what I did there was I provided a range that is local to the NIC in order for the DHCP server service to start successfully. So here you can see that we review the settings again based on the input that was provided throughout the questions that were asked. And I'll go ahead and hit enter here. And now at this point, what happens is the server will detect the virtualization backend if there is one, right? So it'll install OpenVM tools for ESXi, or it'll install the guest additions for KVM. You saw right there that it synchronized its time northbound, and it is configuring some things relative to SE Linux right now and for the firewall, right? So we want to make sure that we have the right ports open to be able to service things like NTP and DHCP and our DC services, so on and so forth. Now, the next component, or the next part here, is where we're actually going to start updating the server fully, right? So we're kind of doing like a, well, we are running an update for DNF, right? And we're going through and we're updating the RPMs on the server. And then after that, the next component that we're going to do is we're going to download mock, and we're going to install the Samba SRC RPM for Rocky. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use mock to actually build out our Active Directory environment with the DC option against the source RPM. Now, some of you may be asking, why do we do it that way, right? There's other ways that you can do this. And so, you can absolutely go to Samba's website and you can download Samba latest, and you can, unzip it and deploy it that way. But for any of you who have done that in the past, you know that there are dependencies on the operating system side that need to be met for you to have a successful compile of Samba from that perspective. When you're using mock, obviously mock is doing all of the dependency work for you, right? You don't have to be a detective to figure out what RPMs are needed, or having to recompile, make clean like 10 times to make sure that you have all of the requirements for Samba to build successfully, right? So mock is such a nice, cleaner way to be able to deploy your Samba AD server, because really it's kind of a set and forget, if you will, meaning that you just need to have that source RPM and obviously some commands that the installer is going to do for you to be able to build out that environment and get a Samba Active Directory server installed on this system, right? So at this point, right, the script is running, the server's doing its thing. This usually takes about 20 to 25 minutes because, we're going to download those other requirements, and then we're going to actually start compiling Samba. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video here. I'll see you guys in a second, right? But it'll be probably about 20, 25 minutes, something like that. So I will be back shortly. Okay, so we are back. We are almost done with the build here for the Samba Active Directory. The other thing that I wanted to talk about real quick is an add-on that actually comes with this server, right? So this is what it is it's a GUI management system that has some scripts built behind it that allows you to do a couple things with the Active Directory server. So all of the scripts are based on Samba tool commands. And what it allows you to do is to be able to do things like add users, remove users, create groups, remove groups, add users to groups for membership, things like that, right? So it's used as a complement, if you will, to remote server administration tools, which are supported by Samba. And in the directory, or excuse me, in the Word document, there is a section that talks about being able to manage the Active Directory server, right? So down here, there is a section that talks about installing RSAT on Windows 11. And then what the server does is it has a little command that allows you to create a bat file that you can then download from the server that will bring up MMC with you being logged in as the administrator to the domain. So the benefit to that is that if you do not have a computer that you're joining to the domain, maybe you are using this more for like a POC implementation, then what you don't need to do is join the server or join the computer to the domain or your laptop. And what you can do is take your computer and just point it to the IP address of the Samba AD server, and then use that bat file to log into the domain. And then that calls MMC, which you can then add the snap-ins and point those snap-ins to your Samba environment so that you can manage things like DNS and the users, sites and services, et cetera, right? Okay, so we are at the validation section of our deployment. So we've compiled Samba. It is up and running. It's configured and provisioned based on the questions that were asked earlier in the installer. And so now we're going to go through and run some tests. And these tests come directly from the Samba website. So this is their portion of validation, and we've just included it in the script here. So the first thing we're doing is we're checking to make sure that you're getting a good Kerberos ticket, and that returns successfully. The next section here gives you some basic SRV record testing. So you can see that we're testing LDAP._TCP and Kerberos UDP, and those are returning successfully. And then we're testing the host and making sure that that resolves to an IP address from a forwarding perspective. Here we're doing an anonymous login to the server just to make sure that that's working correctly. And here we're going to log in under an authenticated session and make sure that that works successfully also. And we have a good result. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a reverse zone on the server. So what the script does is it takes a look at your NIC interface, and based on what it thinks is appropriate, we'll create a reverse zone for you. Just make sure that it looks sane to you, and go ahead and you can install that. And then here, if you are in a testing environment, and you do want to relax the passwords a little bit, or the password complexities, history, so on and so forth, we give you a couple sane options here. You can bypass this if you would like, or if you want to go ahead and do it, you can. Okay, and then for setting up your first user, we'll go ahead and use the server management, and this is what's getting installed right now. So once this installs, then the server will prompt you to reboot, and at that point you'll have a fully operational Samba Active Directory server. So I'm going to go ahead and reboot here, and then I'm going to SSH back into this box. And when I SSH back in, I'll be prompted with the server management GUI. Whoop, wrong password. Okay, so that's it. So we have successfully installed a Samba Active Directory server, and it is up and operational. From this point, if you do management a little bit differently, or you have your own approach to management, you can probably close the video at this point, and I appreciate your time. But if you want to take a look at server management real quick, then we'll go ahead and do that, and I'll show you how to download that RSAT bat file so that you can manage it via RSAT. So right here under Active Directory Management, we have a couple subsections, right? So as I had mentioned, right, you can add a user, delete a user, password reset, so on and so forth. From the DNS management perspective, you can create A records here, and this script will also prompt you if you would like to create a reverse pointer. Obviously, you just want to make sure that you have reverse zones set up for those pointers, otherwise it'll fail. And then the option to create forwarding zones if you would like. Right here, let's go ahead and generate our remote server administration bat file. And so this kind of explains to you that, we're going to create a file and we're going to put it in the root directory of this server. And you have a couple of different options to get it, right? If you use something like WinSCP, you can SCP into the server and grab that bat file that way. Or if you don't want to use that tool, you want everything encompassed into the server, then we provide the option here to install Cockpit with the Navigator component, which allows you to browse the files on the server side. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and install Navigator, and then we're going to go ahead and generate that file, and then we'll download it. So just from this perspective, right, we didn't have Cockpit up and running at this point, but now we are going to enable Cockpit and have it listening on port 9090 of the server. Okay, and so we see that we have a file that's generated in the subdirectory RSAT generated bat file. Go ahead and press any key here. Now what I'm going to do is just make sure that that's there, and the way I can do that is I can either use the cancel button or just Control C, and that will take us back to a CLI. Go to root, and there is my folder. And so we have this RSAT admin bat file. At any time, you can go back into server management by just typing server manager. It is in the path, so it'll automatically come back up. Upon boot, upon root login, this will always show up. It's just in the bash profile, so you can remove that if you would like. You also have the capability of removing it here under server management options, where you can enable or disable, or you actually have the option of updating the module. So, the plan moving forward is that more options will be provided in the future for this server management, and will just automatically be added, right? So it's just a quick update to the GitHub repo to be able to get that new version. We also have the capability of managing our DHCP straight from here, right? So if you did install DHCP, you can create a new scope. You can list your active services. You can actually query the DHCP leases file if you're looking for something in particular. Start, stop, enable, disable, restart services. Or if you want to, you can edit the file manually right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and log into this server via KVM. And again, our port by default for Cockpit is 9090. And here I'm logging in with the server login, not the Active Directory login. Oh. Oh my gosh, why is that not letting me log in? I may have an issue with the FQDM. Yeah, because I wasn't resolving for that server name, so that was my fault. Sorry about that. Okay, so over here, you can see that we have this navigator option, and we are actually at the RSAT generated bat file subdirectory here. So I'm going to go ahead and just right-click on this and download, and then it'll give me an option to save this file wherever I would like. And then I can see that it downloaded it. So I'm going to come over here, and you can see inside of the file, right, all we're doing is we're just creating a bat file that allows us to see an elevated privilege for command prompt for us to log in, and then actually running the command down here where we're specifying the domain that we're going to log into. So I'm going to come over here real quick, and I'm going to edit my wireless connection. And I'm going to point that to my Samba AD server. And I'm going to bring up a web page real quick just to make sure that everything is looking good. I can resolve, so that's good. So now I'm going to just go ahead and double click on this file. And you will get a one-time warning because this is a bat file, right? Windows is obviously not happy about the bat file being downloaded from an untrusted provider, but it is obviously trusted, so I'm going to go ahead and run anyway. And here I am prompted to log in. So I'm going to log in with my domain administrator password. And I'm going to add my snap-ins here. I'll go ahead and add DNS and users and computers. And then over here, all I have to do is select the domain controller that I want to go to. You can see that it's online. And I will go ahead and point my DNS snap-in to this Samba AD server also. And so here we can see that we have our forwarding zones and our reverse zone based on what the installer created. And so here, obviously it becomes a manual GUI management of the server to be able to add users, groups, so on and so forth, right? So the server management is a little redundant, meaning that obviously you can do everything here in RSAT. You don't even need those other tools. But, if you are on a separate system, you don't have RSAT installed, maybe you're using a Mac, those tools on the server side via SSH are a viable option for you to do basic user and group management of the system. The other options here, right, is Samba Service Management. So again, just like DHCP, I can come in here and edit the config manually if I would like to. And then system tools, we have a couple of system tools that are built in that we just added as options, right? So things like HTOP, IPTraf, MC, and Nano for the default editor. And then down here on the Welcome to Server Manager, you can actually see every module that's included and what its capabilities are or what it is designed to do. So that is it, guys. I really appreciate your time. I hope this was a good use of your time. And definitely, if you're looking for a Samba AD server running on Rocky with what I consider to be a pretty straightforward, easy install, give the script a spin, right? You can always go to GitHub. You can always take a look at exactly what that script is doing. You can modify it, use it as your own. Or if you just want to see exactly how you build out a Samba AD server using mock, you can, parse through the script and, use it for your own. So definitely appreciate your time, guys. And I hope you have a great morning, afternoon, evening, and take care. Hopefully we'll see you in future videos. Thanks.